The Stalker. A creature so deadly that nothing you do can stop them from hunting you down and killing you in whatever way it sees fit. It's a common trope in most forms of horror media to include at least one of these types of monsters that will ruin your day, and I have handpicked a total of 9 to be my personal favorites in these categories. Okay, so I was going to make it a top 10, but one of the stalkers I wanted to talk about is from a game that I haven't played, and I discovered that I didn't have the means to play it, so I changed it to a top 9 instead, in case any of you were curious. Now, how are we going to rank these terrifying creatures? Well, first, we look at their design. How terrifying are these monsters in both looks and animations as they lumber toward you? Second, how far do they go to kill you? The longer a stalker sticks around can be both a blessing and a curse. You want a stalker to be around long enough to leave an impression, but you can't have them show up too much, otherwise they'll lose their scariness and become annoying for both the player and the characters.
This is getting old, Jack!
Finally, their power. Since these monsters are unkillable, at least for a while, they should have the power to back it up. If your stalker is invincible, and just that, they lose a lot of that intimidation. Basically, the stronger the better. Well, that's everything. Let's begin.
Rest while you can, because I will hunt you, and I will break you!
Okay, to anyone who happens to be arachnophobic, I recommend that you skip to the time on screen, assuming that you aren't watching this when it's a premiere. I'll give you a second to do that now. We good? Okay. Super Paper Mario. Anyone who's played this game knows where this is going, but those who haven't are probably thinking, Tony, it's a lighthearted cartoony platformer. What scariness could possibly come from a game like this? Well, not much at first, but then you come across this spooky little mansion and meet its maid, Mimi. At first, she seems innocent enough with a bit of a temper to her. She tries to lead you to her mistress Merlee, though all the rooms she leads to you are rigged. Okay, a little suspicious. Then you accidentally break her vase, and she makes you work it off, which seems reasonable, until she demands a literal million rupees from you, and the only way to get that money is either spend hours upon hours on a hamster wheel, or steal all of it from the vault. I highly recommend the latter. Anyways, after that, you finally meet Merlee, only to find it was just Mimi in disguise, who then transforms into... Yup, she's a spider! Gotta say, even though I was spoiled ahead of time, that transformation is nevertheless gruesome. From there, it's a mad dash through the mansion to find the real Merlee, while Mimi gives chase repeating her name over and over again. Thank goodness this game doesn't have voice acting. Fun fact, if you go 3D while Mimi's in the room, it turns out she's actually a robot. Huh. And of course, she can't be killed thanks to a magic barrier from her master, which is only dispelled after you find the real Merlee. Then all you gotta do is jump on her while her limbs fall off. Yeah, Paper Mario be like this sometimes. However, aside from being invincible and having a creepy design, Mimi's got nothing else going for her. All she really does when she finds you is spit rubies at you. Not to mention, despite her size, it's pretty easy to just run right past her. And even though you can get lost in the mansion, if you're quick, you can go a good while without even seeing her. Yeah, that's pretty pathetic, especially in comparison to the others on this list. Then again, it's still a Mario game. I guess Nintendo didn't want to go too far with their seemingly kid-friendly games. And now for the better version. Limbo is a dark and mysterious game where you lead a small boy through a perilous world, solving puzzles and avoiding many dangers, one of which being this giant spider. At first, it doesn't do much, just stabbing at you with its legs if you get too close. In order to proceed though, you need to use the nearby bear traps to take off 3 of its legs, after which it, oh my goodness, that's a big boy. Yeah, now that you've angered it, it'd be no surprise that you'd come across it again. And sure enough, you get caught in its web and hung up to be a potential meal. Don't worry, you eventually get out and are forced to hop away while the spider hunts you down. Yeah, if you thought it wasn't happy before, now it's out for your blood. After a little bit, it catches up and you're forced to solve puzzles on the fly while the spider slowly and very creepily walks towards you. One thing to note is that there's no music for this, only the ambient noises of the forest with a little bit of static as the spider closes in on you. If you're fast or happen to get lucky, it gets crushed by a giant rock. And it's still not dead. Down to only one leg, it pulls itself towards you, desperately trying to impale you with its leg until you rip it off. Now, some of you may argue that the spider is more of a chase sequence than an actual stalker, but you are given moments to breathe in between encounters, meaning it's technically hunting you down during those moments. I'm not willing to put it any higher because of that technicality, but thanks to its creepiness and sheer determination to end you, it at least gets above Mimi, which isn't hard to do, but still. Well, what do you know? Another seemingly kid-friendly platformer got on this list. A Hat in Time is a fantastic 3D platformer that everyone should have a chance to play. Just be sure to brace yourself for Subcommon Forest. Now you might be thinking, oh come on, it's just a mildly spooky forest for kids. And you would be right, until the Snatcher makes a request for you to check out a manor at the edge of the forest. Looks pretty spooky, doesn't it? When you make it there, you can't enter through the front door, though with a manor like this, who'd want to. Instead, you have to go in through the basement doors. But when you're in said basement, one of the Snatcher's minions shows up and says that you can't use any of your hat abilities while you're inside the manor. That's foreboding. Well, once you get into the actual manor, you meet its owner, and the number 7 stalker of this list, Queen Vanessa. So, what exactly does she look like? Well, I can only really describe her as if Baba Yaga went into overdrive. Anyways, you have to collect a couple of keys in the manor in unorthodox ways to proceed, like shaking the ground or lifting balloons to nudge the key and make it fall on the ground. But this is also a double-edged sword, as any noise will get Vanessa's attention and cause her to enter the room, forcing you to hide until she leaves. In the case of the second key, she actually catches onto you and takes the key with her into the bathroom, forcing you to sneak by her as she's showering, grab the key, and get out before she gets you. And that's not even mentioning the statement she makes throughout the level as she tries to get you to show it yourself, whether it be coaxing, toying, or threatening. What sets Vanessa apart from most stalkers is that you never fight her. You go in, avoid her, get what you need, and leave. Just like that. But by far the most interesting part about her is her backstory. A long time ago, she was just a young princess in love with a prince. But this wasn't just your typical innocent love. It was extremely obsessive yandere love, to the point where she will get rid of anything that her prince loves so she can have him all to herself. And she's serious about anything. I mean, she got jealous of bacon, for Pete's sake. One day though, she thought she saw her prince cheating on her, even though he was just buying flowers for her. Instead of just talking it out like a sane person, she locked him in the basement forever, which led to him dying and becoming the Snatcher, and Vanessa becoming that hideous monster we see today. I guess we now know why he's so territorial now. Still, as great of a stalker as she is, I feel like a little more could have been done. During gameplay, she only really walks through the hallways and only comes into the rooms whenever you make a loud enough noise. Plus, this all happens within just one level. A level you'll remember for sure, but still only one. But regardless, Vanessa sure is a woman you do not want to mess with. That's it for the kid-friendly platformers. It's all horror from here. I've been wanting to talk about these games for a while now. I love the Little Nightmares games. Whether it be the original or the sequel turned prequel, I've enjoyed all of them. And since it's a horror series, there are quite a few terrifying monsters. There's the chefs who want to cook you up into a stew, the obese guests who want to swallow you whole, the elderly teacher who... Enough said. The doctor who crawls along the ceiling, and who could forget the antagonists of the two games, the ghostly lady and the slender thin man. However, the problem for this list is that most of the monsters don't actually stalk you. They'll give chase if they see you, but for the most part, they're just living their lives. I wanted to include Thin Man, but he's mostly a chase sequence rather than a stalker, even more so than the spider. I guess the Hunter counts, but he's not all that scary from a design standpoint. I mean, come on, he's just your average guy with a sack over his head. So I turned back to the first game and found one that's not only scary, but also fits the term Stalker. The first monster you ever encounter, the Janitor. That entrance tells you all you need to know. Even though he's shrouded in shadow, you can tell that all of his growth went into those arms and nothing else. While you don't see his face right away, you do later, and it's not a pretty sight. With his skin literally pulled over his eyes, he's completely blind, but his hearing more than makes up for it. Unlike Vanessa, who was alerted by loud noises, the Janitor can hear even the smallest sounds, like toys dropping off a shelf, or even the creaking of the floorboards as you walk over them. The only way to get by him is to be as quiet as possible by walking on pieces of cloth that muffle your steps, or by using loud noises to disorient him, and being quick with any cranks you come across, as the loud noises will draw him near even when distracted. Even when you aren't sneaking by him, he's still going after you, using his monkey arms to reverse the giant ship, and occasionally jump scare you. Heck, even the vents aren't entirely safe, since at one point, he'll reach in through the cracks in the walls and try to grab you. If you're stealthy and fast enough, he'll eventually corner you behind a wedged steel door where you literally disarm him. What makes him even more threatening is that in the Secrets of the Maw DLC, you have to navigate around him in the dark while trying to not step on any coals. Even though he isn't too ferocious compared to the others on this list, the Janitor remains a good stalker and a perfect introduction to the scary game that is Little Nightmares. Let me ask you a question. If Mickey Mouse were a demon instead of a mouse, what do you think he'd look like? How about this? Bendy was originally a cute cartoon demon. He was basically a less successful version of Mickey Mouse. However, Joey Drew, the guy in charge, wanted Bendy to be more than just a cartoon. He wanted him to be real. So with the ink machine, he made a real-life version of Bendy. Unfortunately, due to the machine being faulty and the unknown magic of the ink, Bendy transformed from his cute cartoony form into a deadly monster that would ravage all that it sees. He became the Ink Demon. Far cry from his cartoony self, huh? In fact, the guy could honestly go with a few dozen sandwiches, honestly. Anyways, with this creature roaming the halls of this ruined studio, Joey's former partner Henry must find a way to kill him once and for all. Along the way, you learn from the other ink creatures that Bendy is the most powerful of them all, and is basically unkillable by normal means. To prove it, the Tommy gun, which is the strongest weapon in the game, does nothing to him. I mean, look at what happened to poor Coryxkenshin when he tried it.
Oh my gosh. Guys, should we try and kill him? Bro, it didn't do nothing! It didn't do nothing! Get in the house! Hide! 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 So, the gun does not affect Bendy.
Even other creatures like the projectionist all end up dead at Bendy's hand. Heck, at the end of the game, he even transforms into this ugly thing to become even stronger. The only way to kill him is to play a reel that plays the words, "The End," on a screen. He may be demonic now, but deep down he's still a cartoon. And cartoons essentially live forever until their cartoon ends. But that's all just his power. How is he as a stalker? Well, aside from being jump scare fuel, killing the projectionist, and being the final boss, which is actually pretty easy, he's not really much of a stalker for most of the chapters. Except for Chapter 3, where he's the star of the show. In this chapter, you do several admittedly mundane tasks while avoiding Bendy. You're explicitly told from the beginning that you need to be as quiet as possible, meaning no running, but at the same time don't be out in the open for too long in order to prevent him from showing up. Should he appear, signified by the black wavy aura, your only hope of survival is to hide in these miracle stations and wait until he leaves. But here's what makes him really scary. Where and when Bendy shows up is randomized. Aside from the end of your last task, you never know when he's going to appear, and almost no room in the studio is safe from him, not even the stairs. Meaning you have to concentrate on both your task and watching out for when Bendy shows up, because if he does and you're unprepared, you're as good as dead. So yeah, for a game that tries a bit too hard to be the next Five Nights at Freddy's, it gave us quite a formidable stalker in the form of the Ink Demon. Speaking of Five Nights at Freddy's, Do the animatronics count? Well, they are trying to find and kill you. You can't fight back. Seems like they count, but which ones do I choose? The original 4? The nightmare versions? The fun time 4? Nah, if I'm going to talk about any of them, it's going to be the creepiest animatronic of them all. The one who's responsible for this entire franchise, Springtrap. To understand this monstrosity, we need to look at who he was a long time ago. William Afton was originally a normal man who built the animatronics for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, until one fateful day when a group of kids put his son into the jaws of one of the animatronics, which, didn't end well. Driven mad by grief, William put on a golden bodysuit and tricked 5 kids into following him to the back room, where he killed all of them in cold blood. Those same kids would eventually go on to possess the 5 animatronics seen in the original FNAF. Eventually, William found out about this, and after the pizzeria closed for good, he went back to finish the job. When he was finished, however, the souls of the kids attacked him, and he fled to the back room where he found a golden bodysuit that he immediately put on. But this wasn't the same suit he used before. This was a highly sensitive spring-lock suit deemed too dangerous for employees, which also didn't end well for Afton. There, William was left to rot for 30 years until he was unearthed by another company. By then, William's soul returned to his body, determined to wreak havoc on anyone he sees. Alright, enough backstory. How's the gameplay? Well, as the night guard, you need to keep Springtrap from finding your location by playing an audio clip of a child from one of the speakers in the various rooms. This will distract Springtrap for a little bit, but not forever, meaning you have to constantly play the clip, and if he decides to crawl through the vents, you need to temporarily seal them off so he can't get through them. Sounds easy, right? Well, here's the catch. It will only work if you play the clip in the room Springtrap is close to, which means you need to know where he is at all times. What doesn't help, though, is that the cameras, audio, and ventilations are barely functional, meaning you have to constantly reboot whichever goes offline. And you better do it quickly, because Springtrap doesn't waste any time searching for you. Another thing that makes Springtrap unique is his jump scare. Every other animatronic jumps in your face screaming at you whenever you fail to keep them at bay. Springtrap just walks towards you with a blank expression on his face. Granted, he does snarl at you, but it's probably the tamest jump scare, which I guess makes sense since he's basically a zombie animatronic. All of this makes it clear why Scott Cawthon made him to be the series antagonist, and even though his body may be dead now, his soul will live on. After 11 years, we finally have a new Metroid game. Is it any good? Hell yeah, it is. Seriously, if you haven't played this game yet, turn off the video and go buy and play it now. Just a fair warning, you will quickly learn to fear the titular stalkers of the game, the E.M.M.I.S. These robots were sent into the planet ZDR to exterminate a dangerous parasite known as the X. However, they went silent after a while, and Samus was sent in after them. But she very quickly learns that they've all been reprogrammed to hunt and kill her. From the very first one you encounter, which happens to be severely damaged by the way, it's made painfully clear that all of your weapons do nothing to them. You are taught that if an enemy grabs you, you can escape at just the right moment, but the window is so small that you will never hit it consistently. The only way to destroy them is by harnessing this Omega Force to fire a charge shot right in their face. And this is just for the broken one. The others have faceplates over them, meaning you have to break that before hitting their cores. By the way, there are 7 of these things, and they're all unique from each other. You got the white one, which is the weakest but still deadly, the green one, which can follow you through small gaps, a yellow one that's super fast, a blue one that freezes all that it sees, and a purple one that can see you through walls and fire electric shots. There is an orange one, but that one's disposed of immediately due to plot points I will spoil. Now, I should point out that the E.M.M.I.S don't stalk you throughout the whole area. They're all limited by their respective zones, signified by these glitchy doorways. Also, you get the Phantom Cloak very early on, which renders you invisible for a limited time while restricting your movement. And you can even see the E.M.M.I.S on your map. Plus, they're really not that scary from a design standpoint. But these small points don't damage their status as stalkers too much, especially since if you're close enough, they can hear your movements and will dart in your direction very quickly. In the end, the E.M.M.I. are terrifying killing machines that are not to be trifled with.
Resident Evil.
Oh yeah, I can't make a list like this and not bring up one of the crown kings of horror, Resident Evil. You'd expect a horror franchise as old as this one to give us some good stalkers. And you're right, we got Jack Baker from Resident Evil 7, Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil 8, Ustanak from Resident Evil 6, okay, maybe not that guy. One of the most popular picks is Mr. X from Resident Evil 2, specifically the remake, and I can see why. He's a persistent tyrant that chases you throughout the police station and beyond, and getting to finally take him down is really satisfying. However, he's not our Resi representative for a couple reasons. For one, remember how I said that if a stalker sticks around for too long that they'll get annoying? Well, Mr. X is kind of like that, at least for me. Don't get me wrong, he was plenty scary in the police station and for a little bit outside, but sometimes when he showed up he felt like an unnecessary hindrance, like an Ada segment. I know no one really expected him to show up, but did he really need to? Wasn't he after Leon? He also shows up in the botanical section of the underground lab for about 3 seconds before he's promptly left in the dust. Which leads me to my second point, he is way too easy to lose. Sure, he's a big guy, but with a single grenade, headshot from the Magnum if you find it, and even a few headshots from the shotgun, he'll be down on one knee for quite a while. And that's not even if you're playing as Claire, who gets a freaking grenade launcher. Yeah, there isn't a ton of ammo around, but that's small potatoes compared to this. So if Mr. X didn't make the list, who did? Why, one of the most infamous Resi villains to ever grace the franchise, on par with Albert Wesker in terms of villainy. The one and only Nemesis.
Am I?
Nemesis was created by the Umbrella Corporation for only one purpose: to kill off every member of STARS involved in the Arklay Mansion incident. For the record, I'm going with Remake Nemesis instead of Classic Nemesis because that's the only version I've experienced. Unlike Mr. X, who showed up a bit later in the game, Nemesis is chasing you down from the very start, tearing through apartment floors and throwing building debris at you. He takes out the helicopter that would have taken you to safety and is not only able to tank a missile from a rocket launcher, you know, the thing that took out Mr. X in 1 or 2 hits, but also catch one out of the air and throw it away like a basketball. And all of that is just in the opening portion of the game. Later, he shows up again to chase you throughout the city, and he ain't a slow-moving Mr. X. No, he'll charge at you the moment he sees you, use his tentacle to pull you towards him, leap ahead of you out of nowhere, and even cut you off at your exit by jumping off the buildings. Not only that, but he's also intelligent enough to use his parasite to infect nearby zombies and send them after you, and even use firearms like a flamethrower and a rocket launcher. Heck, even the act of him roaring is enough to daze you if you're close enough, or at least intimidate you. If that's not enough for you, about halfway through the game, he mutates into this hideous monster that drops any and all intelligence for sheer murderous power. But the scariest thing about him by far is the fact that nothing seems to kill him. Throughout the course of the story, he survives being buried in rubble, dropped off the top of a building and having a car land on him, an explosion that covers an entire rooftop, the combined explosions of an oil tanker and a gas station, a train derailing while he's still on it, getting his arm chopped off, which he replaces with a tentacle. Heck, even when you melt him with acid, he mutates even further into this gargantuan giant. It takes 3 shots from an experimental railgun, aptly named the Finger, in order to finally be rid of him. Thank goodness this game gives you moments of reprieve from him, otherwise I think he'd be even more annoying than Mr. X. Even though the 3 remake wasn't as well received as it should have been, it, in my opinion, solidified Nemesis as the deadliest creature Umbrella's ever made, and possibly the most powerful stalker on this list. And somehow, he's not our number 1. So who could be better than Nemesis? Well, not many, honestly. Number 1 might not be as powerful or as persistent as Nemesis. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, Nemesis and frankly most of the other stalkers here are all scripted. They all have their limits, not because of their abilities, but because of how they're programmed. And in some cases, it's downright silly because they know where you are, but then act like you don't exist just as you hide. Number 1, on the other hand, has no such limits because it's programmed so realistically that you'd swear you were fighting it in real life. Oh yeah, I went there. I experienced it. At the time of writing this, I haven't even finished it, and might not. But from what I've seen and experienced, it deserved this spot from the beginning. Number 1 is the alien. I'm willing to bet that some of you saw this coming and some of you did not. How did this creature get on the station, you may ask? That's answered in a document that details a patient infected with a certain parasite. Anyone who at least knows about the movies knows what happened after that. Now the alien stalks the halls of the now dark and ruined space station, and it's up to you, playing as Amanda Ripley, to make it back to your ship, hopefully alive. Like all stalkers, the alien cannot be killed by any weapons you acquire throughout the game, meaning that any attempt to fight back is a death sentence. Now, you'd think it wouldn't be so hard to sneak around a big hulking alien, but remember what I said earlier? It's not scripted. This creature is programmed to behave as realistically as possible. It actively hunts you down throughout the station based on how you play. Where do you like to hide? What's your first instinct when faced with danger? And how often do you check the motion tracker? Also, it will hear any noises you make, be it gunfire while you're trying to protect yourself from hostile humans and androids, the clanging of the locker doors when you hide in them, or even the beeps of the motion tracker if it's close enough. Throughout the entire game, you are never safe. Not in the rooms, not in the lockers, not even in the vents. Sometimes it will even stage traps by hanging in the vents above and then pulling you in through a nearby opening. If you're careless, it will find you and kill you. Now, you might think that if this thing is around for the whole game, it would get pretty annoying having to constantly sneak around it. And you're not entirely wrong, especially given how large the gap is in between each save station. But thankfully, there are ways you can survive. While the AI itself might not be scripted, where it spawns is. If you can remember where it spawns, as well as the layout of the various rooms, you can get around it without much issue. You can also use any hostile humans as distractions for the creature and escape while it's distracted. Heck, there are even moments where the AI might spare you if it senses that you're too stressed. Even it knows being too good of a stalker will make things more annoying than fun. The reason the alien's at number 1, even above Nemesis, is that these developers knew how to craft the perfect stalker. It gives you a challenge, but not too much if you play your cards right. Dare I say it, in terms of raw fear, tension, and helplessness, this is eerily close to that of the first 2 movies. Almost like you're fighting a real creature. A creature that will end you if it gets the chance. And it's all up to you to make sure it never gets it. I'm Tony Sonic, and after a list like this, I'd probably be sleeping with the lights on for a few days. Anyways, as for next time, it'll be my 100 subscriber special. It's going to be actually a series of ew videos that I've actually gotten quite a few requests to do. What are they? Take a look.
Let's go! Yo, yo! Yay! Yahoo! Yahoo! Ow, 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 ow! Yahoo! Ha!
But I won't be doing them alone. I'll be giving him a helping hand. That's right, everybody. I've been promoted from strawman and gag character to occasional collaborator. And not just for these videos, he'll actually be helping me out from now on every time I cover a video that Chari has a partner with. The way it'll go is I'll be covering Chari's points while DT will do whoever his partner happens to be at the moment. Who in this case is Popple's minion. Now, we harbor no hatred against Popple's minion as well. In fact, we actually quite like his content. But like Chari, most of his points are flawed, most of the time. All that said, we'll see you all next week for this Mario and Luigi marathon, which may or may not extend into December, depending on when he does Paper Jam. See you then!